白いうどんは浮いていた。
Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 Ume no Bokenhen was developed by Millennium Kitchen, released exclusively in Japan on July 11th, 2002, for the PlayStation 2. According to the unofficial translation that I had played, the game's English title is My Summer Vacation Adventure by the Sea. But seeing as the game was never released in North America, I'm just gonna keep calling it Boku no Natsuyasumi. In August of 1975, you play as 9-year-old Boku Kubota, sent off to his aunt and uncle's inn in the fictional small seaside town of Fumi for his summer break, while his parents prepare for the upcoming birth of their second child. While there, you'll be spending your time with a whole cast of characters, but some of the main ones you're going to be interacting with include your aunt Mitsuko, your uncle Genta, and of course their children, Boku's cousins, Takashi and Shigeru. You have Yakuko, a girl coming home from being away in Tokyo for school, and her younger sister Hikari, who still lives in town. Almost immediately upon Boku's arrival, you take control, and from that point forward, how Boku, and by extension you, spend their summer is entirely up to you. Outside of a few scripted events such as breakfast, dinner, and bedtime scenes, Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 gives you almost unparalleled freedom in your actions. Should you choose to do nothing but sit and enjoy the sound of the waves for each and every in-game day, you can. But that doesn't mean there isn't anything to do. In July of 2024, I had become aware that the English translation for Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 had not only been completed, but had actually been available for several months. With August being just around the corner, I decided to wait a few extra weeks so that I could begin my playthrough on August 1st, so that I could align my playthrough with the in-game calendar. Had I been aware of the translation sooner, I'm not entirely sure that I would have waited to line the dates up in August, but I'm kinda happy that it worked out that way. This obviously doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. The game was originally released in July, and I doubt they wanted players to wait to start the game. I had just decided to wait because it's not often that a game tells you a specific date that the story takes place on, and having the opportunity to line up the dates would add a certain level of immersion to my playthrough that I'd not get to experience in another game before. Now, was I grasping at straws for extra immersion here? Absolutely. But the truth is, August of that year was particularly stressful for me. The world was how it always is. I was trying to enter the housing market for the first time. I was pretty bummed that I had to cancel a camping trip that I was looking forward to, and working in the animation industry comes with more than a handful of its own stresses. As a quick sidebar here, I want to recognize just how lucky I am to have even been employed during what has been a pretty awful time for the animation industry as a whole, so fingers crossed the industry gets better in the future. So, with all that going on, yeah, I was looking for something I could lose myself into, for even just a little bit of a day. Going into this playthrough, I had some familiarity with the franchise, but what little I did know was about the first game. Other than the fact that there was a sequel, I didn't know anything about Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, or any of the other sequels for that matter. In this internet age, it's far too easy to look up a guide the moment you encounter the least bit of resistance from a game. So for this playthrough, I wanted to challenge myself by not looking up any guides or walkthroughs of any kind. If I got lost and wasted my entire in-game summer, so be it. I did my best to be reasonably thorough, tried to do as much as I could, but this was my summer vacation after all, and I wasn't looking to turn this into a job. So, did I miss things? Yep. Did I find all the collectibles? Absolutely not. But that's okay. I had a good time. Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 takes place entirely within the month of August 1975, with August 31st being the only day in which you have no direct control over Boku's actions, which leaves you the remaining 30 days to do as you choose. Each morning starts with Boku attending the morning calisthenics, assuming you went to bed on time the night before, that is. This is followed by a short breakfast scene with the family that normally gives some kind of setup for what's going to be happening throughout that day. If you put Boku to bed too late the night prior, he sleeps in and misses the calisthenics class. which doesn't mean anything, but you don't get a little stamp to say you did your exercises that day. You take control of Boku at 8 a.m. each morning, and have until as late as 11 p.m., assuming you're okay with Boku sleeping in the following morning. If you end your day at any point before 11 p.m., Boku will wake up in time for the morning calisthenics. However, at 11 p.m., he'll nod off wherever you happen to be standing at the time, and you're going to sleep in the next morning. At 6 p.m. each day, it's dinner time. Your only other forced activity each day. If you happen to be in the house at the time, you'll actually hear your aunt call out to the family from the kitchen. But if you're anywhere else on the property or out in town somewhere, the game likes to activate what I've been calling the Uncle Everywhere system. And Uncle Genta will randomly appear in front of you during the next screen transition and let you know it's time to eat. Within the world of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, time flows differently than it does in the real world. Instead of having a normal clock, which no sane game would do, or having a truncated version of a normal clock, which is how most games do it, this game instead takes a different approach, where time only passes when you perform specific actions, or any time there's a screen transition into a new area. During the daytime, any area in or around your family's property, each transition will move the clock forward 7 minutes. While outside of daylight hours, these transitions will only take 5 minutes. All areas off the property, regardless of the time of day, will also take 5 minutes. A single round of insect sumo? That'll take you 5 minutes. Fishing? That's 20 minutes, but only once you choose the stop fishing option. Swimming takes up the most time at 30 minutes, but will only move forward once you make landfall again. While that might be a large chunk of time, swimming can actually save you a lot of time by getting to a lot of areas much quicker by swimming instead of walking to them. With that explained, there is no need to memorize these specifics. Any time-based event in the game gives you an entire block of time, like afternoon. This gives you a reasonable amount of leeway to get to events on time. Should you feel the game is moving either too slowly or too quickly, in the options menu, there is a speed setting to either speed up or slow down the game to aid your enjoyment. For my first playthrough, I found the default speed setting felt right. There were some days that felt longer than others because I wasn't doing a whole lot, but that was the experience I was looking for. Should you wish to get around a little quicker in the game, there are 2 tips that you should know. Just outside the primary entrance to the main house, you can find a bicycle parked there for you to use at any time. While the bicycle will not affect screen transition times like previously mentioned, it'll just physically speed Boku up so that you get to your destination in real time a little faster than you would otherwise. Personally, I'm not a fan of the bike riding in the game. It controls fine, but I just preferred the slower pace of the game, giving me more time to admire everything. The other tip to know is that bees are your friend. Sort of. Approaching a beehive, Boku will instinctively poke it with his fishing rod, because unlike most people, Boku is aware that bees have a deep love for fishing. The bees in turn rush out to celebrate their new friend, and Boku will awake moments later back at the Akaniya house. You can use this to travel a fairly large distance pretty quickly. There are plenty of activities that you can spend your summer enjoying. You can attend the daily calisthenics, water the morning glories, get your fortune told, collect insects and or fight insects in the bug sumo wrestling, go to the park, search for bottle caps, go fishing, go swimming, take a bath, or earn some money by beating up this old man. Even with many things to do, for most players, myself included, your time is going to be primarily spent exploring, relaxing, and talking to the small handful of characters there are to talk to, getting to know them, and helping them any way you can. The only activity that you can be locked out of doing is the calisthenics, as they only happen in the morning, so to take part, you must wake up on time, meaning you don't accidentally sleep in on account of going to bed too late the night before. During my playthrough, I didn't understand that you could put yourself to bed early or get to exercise at all, so I missed out on that for the entire summer. Your aunt does clearly tell you this, I'm just dumb. On the bright side, missing the calisthenics seems to be the only negative to staying up too late, so feel free to stay out as long as you wish. The amount of running around you'll be able to do instead will more than make up for missing Radio Taiso. Watering the morning glories is exactly as it sounds. Your cousin Takashi assigns each of the 3 kids a vine and proposes a contest to see who can get their flowers to bloom the fastest. This meant every morning I would start my day by watering my flowers because while I'm far from an avid gardener, I'm not going to lose to my cousins. Remembering to water them daily will not only affect when they bloom, but for how long. In the late game, you will be given a small reward for each day that your morning glories were in bloom. Just outside of the family property lies 3 Jizo statues where you can get your fortune read. There are a few different fortunes that can be given out, such as modest, great, or cursed. From what I can tell, the fortunes let you know what your luck stat for that day will be. The better your luck, the easier chance you're going to have to catch some fish or a higher chance of finding some rare insects. At least, that's how I think it works. Some of the best bug days I've found in my playthrough were on cursed fortune days, but maybe I just got really lucky those days too? If you're looking for a little more specificity with your fortune, you can talk to Hikari. Using the power of her paper fortune teller, she will become an omniscient guide leading you towards special events. Asking her during the daytime, she'll tell you about events that day, but find her in the evening and she will tell you of the events the following day. When getting your fortune read, she will offer you 4 numbers to choose from. If there is ever a number with a red circle around it, those are considered main events where more important things are happening. Choosing a non-circled number will give you the details on smaller side events. Wandering around, you'll typically find some of these events yourself, but if you've been having some uneventful days or just worry you're missing something, there is nothing stopping you from selecting all 4 options whenever you're getting your fortune read. So feel free to read them all if you just want some more information. If you're playing this game, I hope you like bugs, because catching, collecting, and fighting bugs is one of the more involved and larger activities that you can take part in throughout the game. You can take out your bug net at any time by going through the menu and selecting the bug net, or you can simply press the R1 button, something I didn't figure out well into my playthrough. You can use the bug net to catch things like butterflies, crickets, grasshoppers, stuff you'd typically catch with a bug net. Beetles, however, can only be picked off trees, either by kicking them or by spreading some sugar water on them first. This will make it easier to get the beetles. Sugar water can be made in the kitchen any day after the family has eaten dinner. Thankfully, you only need to make it once for it to remain in your inventory for the rest of the game. There are 101 different insect species to collect. Some only appear at certain times of day, others only appear certain times of the month, or only in singular locations. A select few can only be collected from trading your insects with your cousins. Whenever you catch an insect, it gets placed automatically in your green insect collecting kit that was left to you by your cousin Takashi. Looking inside, you can find your bugs. You'll get some basic information on them, such as their name, their size, the date they were collected. Should you want to learn more about them, simply take them out of the kit and place them inside the white box found below the kit in the menu. Inside the kit, you can only keep 15 insects at any given time, but should you need more, you could choose to release some of your bugs back to the wild by placing them on the photo icon in the menu. Or you can drag them over to the wooden board on the menu where they will stay instead. I think in-universe you're preserving the bugs here. I don't think they stay alive when you put them here. Now, collecting your bugs is a great time, but where's the violence? Well, worry not, because you can take your tiny little friends over to your cousin's secret base and have them take part in the insect sumo. Being any good at this is a mixture of a little bit of skill and a lot of luck. Select your bug and place him inside the tiny sumo ring. The only option you have before starting the match is whether or not to agitate your beetle by poking it. Doing so will increase their agitation level at the expense of their stamina. Agitation increases the likelihood of them performing a special move, whereas stamina is a little more straightforward. It's how much energy they have to stay in the fight. Once your bug has 10 victories, you're finally able to give them a name, and that is when you will start to root for them, because we're going to be attached to anything we get to name. Plus, it becomes much easier to keep track of them with an actual name, instead of being referred to as Oni Stag 2. The ultimate goal of this minigame is to gain access to the secret area of your cousin's already secret base. Collecting bottle caps, just as it sounds. Throughout Fumi, there are bottle caps that can be found that each feature dinosaur illustrations on them. Some of them can be easily spotted from the glint they put off, especially easy to see underwater, which is great because that is where I found the majority of them. Collecting the bottle caps increases the amount of time you can hold your breath underwater, allowing you to dive deeper and explore longer. There are 25 bottle caps in total, and if you're struggling to find the last few, you can always purchase jet cider from the fridge in the main kitchen to get some more. Like any great game, Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 features a fishing minigame. Once you've picked a spot you'd like to fish, stand on the water's edge and press the triangle button to pull out your fishing rod. You can then press the square button to choose from a small selection of tackle varieties. The game features 7 different combinations to choose from, each with their own intended use. However, they each give a fairly straightforward description of what they do and where they are best suited for, so you don't need to be a fishing savant to make the right choice. Finally, you get to select which bait to use. Like in real life, certain fish prefer certain bait, so if you're not catching the fish you want, try switching up the bait you use. Bait can be found all along the shore just outside of the house, or under multiple stone or wooden plates found bridging water. Once you're ready to start fishing, it's as simple as waiting for a bite and pressing the circle button, and you'll pull up the fish. While the fishing is fairly simple, it's not exactly fun like fishing can be in some other games. However, it is relaxing, which I think better fits the theme that this game is going for anyways. If you're not into catching fish, perhaps you're more into swimming with them. While the majority of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 takes place in front of gorgeous 2D pre-rendered backgrounds, when you dive into the water, you're also diving into a fully 3D environment. Making the literal jump from 2D to 3D makes the underwater portions of this game feel much more magical than they otherwise would have felt. While there are not many things to buy during your stay at Fumi, there are even less ways to earn money to do so. Being only 9 years old, Boku hasn't learned to invest his allowance into crypto yet. However, you can get yourself 10 yen by offering to give shoulder massages. You can offer one up to the town doctor during the day, and should your aunt be watching television, you can offer one her as well in the evenings. Now, I've only had a couple massages in my day, but it looks more like Boku is practicing the bongos, but maybe that's why they're only giving him 10 yen. While Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 is far from a sprawling open world that many modern quote-unquote gamers would come to expect nowadays, game director Kaz Ayabe and his team over at Millennium Kitchen knew to follow in the footsteps of the first game and make a much smaller, more manageable world. One where the player can become intimately familiar with each location very easily and in a relatively short amount of time. On top of that, it needed to be a place where you'd want to spend your summer vacation. And for the month of August 2024, the town of Fumi was my home. It was a place that welcomed me, and now as I write this down a few weeks removed from having been there, I miss it. To make art that others will connect with, you need to be connected with it yourself. So naturally, the fictional town of Fumi, the setting of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, was inspired by Izo, Japan, an area that director Kaz Ayabe frequented to go fishing. Another specific town by the name of Futo was a particularly strong influence as well, as some of the photographs taken by Ayabe during his trips there can actually be seen in the opening credits of the game. With a location set in place, it was up to the team at Millennium Kitchen to map out exactly what they wanted Fumi to be. Once that was finalized, it was up to the people at Kusanagi, an animation studio that specializes in background art, to bring Fumi to life. As you've been seeing throughout this video so far, the backgrounds in this game are a true masterclass in creating escapism through art. Each background is filled with so much detail that it makes Fumi feel as real as any town you've been to. It's the small imperfections that make each area come alive. Lawns not being perfectly manicured, old boards being used to build things because it just happened to be what the characters had on hand, things in the house not being put back properly, and I mean, just look at this fridge. Tell me you haven't seen a relative's fridge look exactly like this. It's not just that the backgrounds are beautiful, it's the expert knowledge of exactly where to place the camera to best show off each location. I love this extreme downward angle when you enter the kitchen. The framing outside the clinic, looking up to the sky as your aunt hangs the laundry, or watching the sunset from the dinner table. Each and every background in this game is something I would happily frame on my wall. I also want to mention the drawings that Boku puts into his journal at the end of each in-game day. They're a little snapshot of the most important event from that day, and these are just great. It would be impossible to talk about anything related to the art of Boku no Natsuyasumi without mentioning the frankly flawless character designs of Minako Ueda, who famously was the artist responsible for the mascots of the Lion Corporation's Kiri Kiri hand soap. Each character is simple yet clearly distinct from one another, with such small differences like a slightly different nose or a different hairstyle. While Kiri Kiri soap products were not a part of my youth, there is something inexplicably nostalgic with these character designs, fitting perfectly with the game's themes of nostalgia and childhood. Their simplistic designs really help the characters pop from the detailed backgrounds. Something I'm not remotely educated enough to talk about, but will because this is YouTube, is the game's HUD and overall UI. That's heads-up display and user interface for those not aware of the acronyms. The HUD of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 is fairly easy to talk about because, well, there isn't one. The desire for more immersion in games has always been talked about, but only in the last few years have I heard an increased chatter about the subject being tied to removing the HUD. Yet here's a franchise from the year 2000 that knew they wanted as little as possible between the player and the fictional Japanese town. Now, Boku no Natsuyasumi isn't the first game to do this. It wasn't uncommon in games from the 90s and others from the early 2000s to feature little or no HUD whatsoever. But as games became more and more complicated, so too did the need for them to help guide the player. When looking at games released today, you can see that it can be very easy to fall into the traps of adding unnecessary information onto your screen. Without the proper restraint when designing this game, they could have absolutely filled the screen, and it would have completely ruined the experience that this game was aiming for. While Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 does keep the primary play screen clear of all things, the information you will need does have to go somewhere. So of course, we have to talk about the flawless menus in the game. I mean, look at this. It is a thing of beauty. With as few words as possible, we have a menu that gives you all of the information that you could possibly need, while at the same time looking like a handful of items that a child would have placed on a desk, integrating the menu seamlessly with the rest of the world. We've got a calendar page showing off the date, a map showing you your current location, some tools for your settings, a bug net sticker to select your bug net, a little yellow bag filled with any item you might have picked up, a fishing rod with some supplies for all things fishing related, your insect cage and collection kit for all things bugs, your shirt that you can select if you ever want the guns out, and finally, the literal framed photo of where Boku is currently standing that you select to resume the game. Honestly, this is what all game menus should strive to be. Boku no Natsuyasumi is a franchise synonymous with PlayStation in Japan, spawning not just one, but 3 sequels across multiple PlayStation platforms. Even recently, the titular Boku even appeared in Team Asobi's Astrobot as a VIP bot. Despite its popularity and financial success, the franchise has never left Japan, at least not officially. Thanks to Hilltop, a skilled English translator, players outside of Japan were getting a chance to play these games without having to be fluent in Japanese, which despite my minimal efforts around 2009, I am not. Like most things, the story of exactly why these games never left Japan is a pretty boring one. Sony just didn't think the West would like it. In a 2024 interview with Nintendo Life, Kaz Ayabe said, "I was told that the Western audience wasn't interested in insect collection." On one hand, to be completely fair, they aren't wrong. I didn't know that any kid liked to collect bugs, though I'm sure there's a couple out there. But on the other hand, this was an interview about a nearly 25-year-old franchise, so maybe there was more to this story. Not satisfied with the bug answer, I decided to go straight to the source. When I reached out to PlayStation for an answer, they simply said, no. While setting up the fan translation for Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 was surprisingly simple, some people may not want to jump through those hoops to get it working. For those people, I would suggest checking out Shin-Chan, Me and the Professor on Summer Vacation, or the more recently released Natsumon 20th Century Summer Vacation, both of which were designed by Kaz Ayabe. Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, and by extension the entire franchise, was built around 2 core ideas: childhood nostalgia and a countryside summer. While everything in these games are suitable for children, the game was actually targeting adults, specifically ones that lived in a city, maybe no longer had time for a proper vacation and would look back fondly on the memories of childhood when they were able to properly relax. I grew up in a relatively small riverside town in southern New Brunswick. It was a little more built up than some of the surrounding areas, but otherwise pretty insignificant in the eyes of the city folk. Despite the small town life we already had, my family spent a not insignificant amount of my childhood at my grandparents' farm. And if you want to talk about rural, you can't get much more rural than that farm. You know, the kind of place where the cows outnumber the people at least 30 to 1. Despite having never yet been to Japan, the quaint seaside setting of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 is extremely nostalgic to me. At 9 years old, I wasn't quite as adventurous as Boku. However, being aware that I might not have the best memory of details from that age, I decided to ask my mother what she might have remembered specifically about me at that time. And it turns out my memory wasn't far off the mark. According to her, I played video games and I spent time with friends. Truly a trendsetter. I didn't go around collecting bugs. In fact, I hated bugs. Still kinda do if I'm being honest. I despised fishing. Worms gave me the creeps. Fish scared me. And even when I did manage to catch something, they tasted terrible. Turns out I wasn't much like Boku at all when I was that age. But that's fine. I'm sure anyone who has to pay bills can be nostalgic for much simpler times. As I grew older and moved to increasingly larger cities, I grew a fondness for the smaller town life which I grew up with. I write this sentence from my condo in downtown Toronto. Far cry from where I started, and I have to say, it sucks. Don't get me wrong, there were some fantastic conveniences to living in a major city, but I grew up around too many trees to get any enjoyment out of this concrete jungle. Which is why I do what I can to spend as much of my summers as I can away from here. In the summer of 2024, I did not have much opportunity to get away. And so, playing Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 became my pseudo-summer vacation. Each day of August of that year, I would finish my work for the day and boot up Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 and play exactly one in-game day before closing the game and continuing on with my various other daily activities. After about a week of this routine, my brain created a sort of Pavlovian response to the game's menu music as a signifier to my brain that I'm no longer working and it's time to relax. Similarly, I created the opposite connection with the going to bed jingle that plays at the end of each day with having to get back to work. As a few months into my 32nd year of living, I'm a little ashamed to admit that it wasn't until having this kind of routine, specifically with this game, that I learned the importance of properly disconnecting from your work, even if it's just for a moment. Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 might have the least amount of music in any game I have ever played. With the exception of what is played on the title screen when you save the game and the little jingle that plays at the end of each day, the vast majority of the game features no music at all. Had I known before starting that there wouldn't be any music, honestly, I might not have played the game at all. Because that sounds like the complete opposite of a good time to me. It's probably been pretty clear by now that I'm quite fond of this game, so what's the deal? While the game does feature very limited music, what it uses in its stead are some of the most immersive, high-quality nature sounds I've ever heard. They lifted me directly out of my uncomfortable computer chair and placed me gently in the small Japanese town. I know it's incredibly naive to say, but it turns out visuals can only do so much when trying to transport you to somewhere new. The real trick is the audio. I know footage of the game has been playing throughout this video, but with me talking so damn much, you can't hear it. So let's take a moment to close our eyes and listen to the sounds of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2. Living in major cities for the last decade of my life, moments where I get to hear real nature sounds have not been common for me. Even with my best efforts, I would only get to a park a few times a year. It was nice, but it just wasn't enough. With my daily play sessions of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, I was finally getting nature sounds daily, and I was happier for it. The reason these sounds are so effective is they were incredibly high quality audio samples recorded in various rural locations by some of the people who did the sound for Gran Turismo. So they know how to record some good audio. There isn't literally no music in this game, it's just used sparingly. So when it is used, it hits incredibly effectively. Many of the times music does play in the game, I don't want to spoil because it's something best experienced firsthand. Everyone who has sat through my rambling attempt to make this game appealing owes it to themselves to experience this game firsthand. Play right now. Play it literally right now. Stop this video and go play it. Come back when you're done. Recently, Boku did appear as a VIP bot in 2024's Game of the Year recipient Astrobot, so there is the tiniest sliver of chance that it reinvigorates interest in the franchise and we see a re-release. That's not going to happen. Maybe you want to experience this kind of game but go in knowing nothing like I did with this game. In that case, let me recommend to you Natsumon 20th Century Summer Kid. It's the latest game from Millennium Kitchen and creator Kazayabe, and it's something that I know I'll be checking out in the future. You might be looking at the runtime of this video thinking, what else could I possibly have left to say? Well, the truth is that most people aren't going to play the game for themselves. I know I certainly don't have the time to check out even a fraction of the games I watch videos about, so I don't really blame anyone if they don't want to play Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, or just know they'll never have time to do it. My playthrough of the game was something meaningful to me, and if you aren't able to experience it for yourself, I wanted to be able to share that experience with you. So the second part of this video is going to be an edited version of my entire playthrough. As much as I want to keep with the spirit of my original playthrough, I wasn't going to upload 14 hours of footage, a chunk of which is just me struggling with the tank controls at times. Also, to shatter the illusion completely here, for 31 straight days I did forget to disable achievements on the PS2 emulator I was using, so you might see them pop up from time to time in the footage. And all I can really say to that is, whoops. On August 1st, 1975, our summer vacation begins. Our titular Boku is riding the ferry to his aunt and uncle's house in Fumi. His parents have sent him away as they await the arrival of their second child. I've never known anyone to literally ship off their child when they needed their attention focused on something else, but I certainly can't argue that it wouldn't make things easier. While Boku is alone on his trip, he's not alone on the ferry. Here we meet Yasuko, a high school girl who lived in Fumi until she recently moved to Tokyo to attend high school. After this short introduction, we get our opening. 「夢が覚め When we make landfall, we're greeted by Boku's aunt Mitsuko, Uncle Genta, and his cousins Takashi and Shigeru. Here we also meet Yakuso's sister Hikari, and finally Simon, a traveling photographer staying at the inn run by Boku's aunt and uncle. Now, because Boku's family runs an inn, you might think that Boku will be staying in one of the remaining rooms, because currently, Simon's the only one staying with them. But no, instead they set Boku up in the storage closet. It sounds a lot worse than the reality. It's a pretty decent sized room. It's got a bed, a desk, and certainly a lot nicer than the childhood bedroom I had. Except for the fact I don't see a PS2 set up in here. And just like that, we're given free reign of our summer. Small thing that I love about this game is anytime you step outside, you get a little animation of Boku finishing putting his shoes on. It's a cute detail. With my new freedom, I decide it's time to fuck around, ignorantly unaware that find out is around the corner. I find my cousins looking for crayfish to use for fishing bait, which you can find hiding under the concrete bridges around town. Takashi says, they're all empty today, but I find one no problem, clearly a skill issue. Here my cousins introduce us to our first mystery. Nobody lives in the dilapidated building next door, yet somehow, fresh cat food appears every day. Because I heard they were probably cats inside, I completely ignored the potential danger and ran in to pet some little dudes. Heading back outside, I do some looking around the property before I'm called for dinner. It's a huge spread and Boku is still clearly a little uncomfortable, but it's the first day, he'll fit in soon enough. After the meal, my aunt mentions my summer project, which is not something we do in North America. In Japan, the summer break is already only like 6 weeks, and they're throwing homework on top of that. Now that it's getting dark out, I figure it's best to take this time to look around the inside of the house. My first stop is the dock, just outside of the dining area, and this is one of my favorite areas in the game, especially at night. In the living room, my aunt is watching wrestling. She also clearly explains that if I stay up too late, I'll miss morning calisthenics, something I completely forgot 5 minutes later and never remembered for the rest of my playthrough. Heading over to my cousin's bedroom, Takashi tells me that he has left his bug collecting kit for me to use for the summer, since he isn't using it. More bugs for me, I guess. Shigeru, on the other hand, mentions their summer project, growing morning glories, and here Takashi proposes a contest. They already have 3 vines planted, so why not have a race to see who will grow the fastest? Now, I'm no gardener, but I'm not going to lose to children, so the contest is on. At this point, Simon steps in, mentioning he would love to photograph the flowers, and will take a picture for each day they have bloomed. The healthier our flowers, the more photos we'll receive. Back in my new bedroom, I spend some time checking out the insect collecting kit, but with no bugs. I'm just looking at plastic. Not tired yet, I decided to explore the house a little bit more. Upstairs I find the bath, which switches at certain times between men and women, and the hallway leading to the bath has these little color-coded flags that even say men or ladies. I continue to wander around until I basically pass out on the spot, and my aunt collects me and brings me to my room.
さあ、僕くん、絵日記書いて、おやすみなさいしましょう。
おばちゃん、おやすみなさい。
You end each night by filling in your little journal with a drawing and a little write-up about the day. I love these. The drawings are really cute, and in the writing we get to see just how positive Boku is. The morning of August 2nd, we arrive at the breakfast table with both of our cousins mysteriously absent. We learn that they went out to watch the rocket. This is where we also learn of a local boy named Yo. He builds the rockets. We step outside just in time to see the rocket fly horribly off course. Apparently, this is not outside the norm for his rockets. It turns out his support rockets need more valves, but those are expensive, so it's better to salvage what he can from each wreck. I wonder if this is an item that we'll be looking for later. Yasuko arrives, and after a brief conversation, we agree to meet up with her later at the park entrance, where she'll show us her house. I don't know why we just don't meet her at the house. On my way to the park, I remember I have to water the plants. Well, my plant. This is a competition after all. I do a pretty good job of staying on top of the watering, so you can just assume I water them each day going forward, so I'll be skipping this part in the future days. Meeting up with Yasuko, we learn she doesn't really have any friends around here.
もう日射病になっちゃうかと思ったよ。そんなに待たせたんだ。ちょっとだけ嘘よ。私さ、ここに帰ってきても家族以外のいわゆる友達ってやつが皆無なんだよね。
Arriving at Yasuko's house, we learn that she can only access her bedroom from the backyard. This is because the door from her room to the rest of the house is locked, and when her mom left, she took the key, and it's been locked since. Well, we know she's not related to the Kool-Aid Man, because otherwise this would be a non-issue. It's really no wonder she hasn't figured out just taking the door off its hinges, because look at her room, it's 95% windows. Girl is literally getting cooked in there. It's a miracle she even knows her own name. I spend a bit of time exploring her room and stealing her hidden bottle caps. Eventually, I find myself back in the park chatting up Hikari, and she gives us the rundown on her uncanny fortune-telling ability, giving me 4 options to choose from. I, of course, chose all 4. My summer's just started, and I need all the direction I can get. I spend the bulk of my afternoon exploring around town until I find myself in the local clinic, where the nurse, Nagisa, makes fun of my name for being Boku. Now, I don't speak Japanese, but I made sure to learn just enough to understand why she laughs at me. See, Boku in Japanese is a pronoun. While here in North America, we primarily use he, her, they. The Japanese language has a ton of pronouns. And Boku is basically a pronoun that means I'm a young boy. Here we also meet the town doctor, or Dr. Sagara, who is Yasuko's and Hikari's grandfather. Heading back to the inn, my uncle gifts me a fishing rod, making this an automatic great game. I rush over to my favorite spot to give it a try, but I mess up the controls and dive headfirst into the water instead. Determined to try again, I climb back up, only to be called away for dinner. after dinner, I remember my cousins mentioning catching bugs with sugar water, so I head to the kitchen to whip some up.
これでムシムシ大量獲得だ。
I then spend the rest of my evening fishing. That is until I decide I should probably get cleaned up. In the bath, I'm joined by Simon, and
こんばんは。
look, I know that in other cultures this is totally normal, but for me, I mean, look,
弊社の国では
I think I could bathe with the fellas. Just me and the bros, cheeks out. But then little Billy Buzzkill walks into the room, and that's a wrap on bath time. In the morning, I run into my uncle at his workshop. He gives me some fishing advice that I will assuredly forget in the near future.
港の中でアジみたいにキラキラ光る魚を釣りてえ時はサビキ釣りの仕掛けだぜ。
なんで？
針に細工がしてあって水の中でキラキラ光るんだ。
I decide to check out the guest rooms in the upper area of the inn. 2 of them are empty, but the third one belongs to Simon. The room is filled with photography equipment and various photographs, but most importantly, the March 1996 issue of National Geographic can be seen on the floor, completely shattering the illusion of when this game takes place. Obviously, that's a bit of a joke, but growing up, we had a giant stack of... Obviously, that's a bit of a joke, but it was something I... Obviously, that's a joke, but it was something that I noticed right away. Growing up, we had a giant stack of National Geographic at my house, and this was the issue that was always on top of that pile. Nobody in the house ever touched them, other than to keep moving the entire stack to be in the way somewhere else. I don't know why we had them.
大丈夫だよ。
Around noon, I head back to Hikari to get my fortune read. It mentions the secret hideout again. I still haven't found the graveyard that it's supposedly close to, so I go spin around on the carousel to get some direction. Outside, I find Yasuko sitting in the dirt reading about mice. Not very exciting, but at least we've clocked what type of furry she is so early in the game.
ね、可能な限り猫の視点の高さに近づいて本を読んでたんだ。猫の本なの？ネズミの本。
I make my way to a tree outside the clinic that I had found the day prior that had mentioned being able to catch beetles. So this tree became the prime candidate for the sugar water treatment. Instantly there is a beetle, I grab it, and shove it into my plastic green prism. Remembering that there's a gate on the property that I have never been through, I make my way for that. There I found the Jizo statues. They tell me that I have great fortune. Lucky me. It's not long after that I found myself wandering into the graveyard. Barely have time to appreciate the place, because the only thing I can think of is that secret hideout has to be nearby. Find a pretty rudimentary tree fort, figuring that, oh, yeah, we're dealing with kids. This is incredibly easy to spot from like 200 feet away. So this has to be the secret hideout. I climb up, and with some sort of dad thermostat sense, my cousins appear out of nowhere to confront me about entering their base without permission. Confused how the place was even found, Boku points out that it's pretty visible, proving that we aren't dealing with kids, but in fact, dumb kids. They immediately forgive me because they have someone new to play against in their kind of cruel game of insect sumo. But then again, these are digital bugs, so fuck them, let's fight. I decide to throw in a stag beetle I found earlier that day up against Takeshi's sawtooth stag. Seeing that his beetle is like twice the size of mine, I'm pretty doubtful that I'm going to pull off the victory here. But then I see that his fighting record is 0-6. He's a loser. I pull off the upset by just sidestepping out of the way. Now with my ego through the roof, I accept another fight, this time against Shigeru. I lose pretty much instantly, a fate I certainly deserved. At dinner, the boys mentioned that Yo still can't seem to find the rocket from yesterday, but that it crashed somewhere in the mountains. They also mentioned that they never found the previous rocket either, and that it's somewhere in the ocean. Sounds like I've got some ideas where to look for these rocket valves. Directly after this conversation, for seemingly no reason, Shigeru goes completely ape. It's not relevant to the plot at all, I just thought it was really funny in the corner seeing the kid freak out like this. After dinner, Boku talks about how he thinks jellyfish are cute, and the rest of the family laughs at him. Rude, but, like, they're not wrong. They're barely sentient jam.
水の中にプカプカ浮いて気持ちよさそうだし、見た目も可愛いじゃない。食べるのが好きっていうのはわかるけど。クラゲが好きってそんなに変かな。
Spend the evening wandering around, you know, as you do. That is until I hear music playing. Determined to find the source, I make my way through the park to find out where it's coming from. And it looks like it's Yasuko's house. I guess Gramps was getting ready for the club. Speaking with him, we ask him how old he is, and he gives us a small lesson on Kazoidoshi, when you are considered a year old upon being born, and you're only aged up on New Year's. Yasuko and Hikari show up early in the morning, and what follows is a bit of an odd scene full of cat puns that ends with Boku's aunt saying that Hikari knows more than one way to skin a cat. Outside, she talks about how Shigeru is always teasing her by doing things like hiding her slippers. Yasuko basically says, yeah, my sister's stupid, let's explore. Here Yasuko is going to be showing you around town, but most of this I've discovered on my own already, but I tag along just in case she shows me something new. Eventually Boku runs off on his own towards a property that Yasuko really does not want to be anywhere near. Eventually she decides to follow after Boku, and thankfully the house isn't anything dangerous. The home actually belongs to her childhood friend, whom she's lost touch with since she went away to school. Look, I've lost touch with friends. We all have. But there are literally 3 houses that we know of in this whole town. It would take some serious effort not to keep in touch. Before we leave, we learn that, of course, this childhood friend is Yo. Because of course it is. We've heard his name mentioned before, and he had to live somewhere. Heading back to the house, Simon slides out of some bushes to take your photo with Yasuko and leaves as quickly as he appeared. Spend the majority of the afternoon swimming, determined to find that rocket, but determination isn't enough, and all I find is a bottle cap. Sometime later, I decided to play in the park for a little bit, have some fun, and see how in shape Boku is as he bangs out more pull-ups than I could ever dream of doing. I then spend the evening just wandering around, enjoying the night air. At breakfast, Boku asks for the name of the river that flows through town, and it turns out it doesn't have one, and now it's Boku's responsibility to name the thing. After I finished eating, I beeline it over to Simon for some reason, but luckily this time he isn't asleep. He talks about being a photographer, his love of sunsets, and his pictures actually get published in National Geographic. His goal is to capture the sound of the sizzle of the moment when the sun kisses the sea. Heading out to water the flowers, I notice my aunt standing in the yard. Water the flowers first so I don't forget, then circle back. Back to my aunt, she's waiting for a new guest to arrive, a lone female traveler who plans on staying a while.
予約の電話があったの。一人旅でここの民宿に泊まりに来るんですって。
I spend the majority of the afternoon swimming, still looking for the rocket, and still no luck. Hours later, Nurse Nagisa teaches me the science behind the meat sweats.
お口から
Cool.
入った食べ物は消化管で消化吸収されて、その後肝臓でエネルギーに変わるんだけど、この時にタンパク質の場合、糖質と比べて5倍も熱を出すのよ。
Talking to Dr. Sagara, he mentions his sore shoulders, and starting today, we can now offer him a massage.
ねえおじいちゃん
I don't really know if Boku's good at this. It looks like he's just doing his best Donkey Kong impression, until he pays me 10 yen for the effort. Back at the house, my aunt is cooking dinner. Talking to her here, you can try to guess what she'll be making for dinner. I guess clam spaghetti, you know, like an idiot. I decided to check the fridge after I made my guess, which isn't helpful, but even if I checked before, I don't know how much it would have helped. The fridge is packed. A little while later at dinner, you can see that sardine hamburgers were made. Just want to take a moment to appreciate that even though the meal scenes are usually pretty short, the developers actually put in a little bit of extra effort to plate up a bunch of different meals so it's not the same thing every day. It's a nice little touch. Spend some of my night talking to Simon, who says enjoying a quiet evening is one of the best things in the world. Hard agree. At the end of the conversation, he gifts me with the developed photo he took of Boku and Yasuko yesterday.
わあ、ありがとうサイモン。
Spend the remainder of the evening talking to my cousins. We mostly talk about swimming. It's not the most exciting conversation, but sometimes those are the best ones. Outside after breakfast, we meet Yoshika, the traveler that our aunt mentioned yesterday. We don't learn a lot about her, just that she's older than college age. She asks us if we knew she was coming, and Boku just straight up lies and says, nope. After some morning activities, I head to Yoshika's room to chat her up. She's not there at the moment, but we can learn that she plays the guitar, and smokes. Apparently, a lot. Like, damn girl, you've been here for an hour and that ashtray is full. Who are you, my dad? On the balcony, I find my aunt whispering to herself about how attractive the new guest is, and she, quote, not going to lose to her. Mitsuko's got nothing to worry about. No one in their right mind is turning down a MILF that puts out this kind of spread every day. Spend the rest of the morning doing a little more insect sumo. I might not love bugs, but I do love to win. On my way back, I run into Yo in the graveyard. Finally, a proper introduction with Rocket Boy. We unsurprisingly talk about rockets, and mentions that he thinks one day his rockets will make it to space. When we're about to eat dinner that evening, Yasuko and Hikari drop by to use the bath. I'm not really sure why, it's a little weird, but my aunt doesn't have an issue with it. I guess the inn is also the public bath for the town. It's not super clear. Later that night, I find Hikari sitting outside of the bath area of the inn. She promises that if we meet up in the morning, she's going to take me to the secret beach. Back inside, Yoshika is making fun of Simon because to her, Simon is a surname. The entirety of her evidence is the existence of American singer-songwriter Paul Simon. I love the conversation these three end up having because Simon and Yoshika are having a fairly normal conversation, while Boku occasionally chimes in with things completely unrelated. Having no real input into the conversation, I decided I'm spending the remainder of my night in my room and looking at all the bugs I've been collecting. First thing in the morning, I ran over to the park to where I had agreed to meet Hikari.
あれ
And she honestly seems a little surprised that I showed up.
まあ一応約束は約束だからね。
On our way to the beach, she properly introduces us to her dog, Kembo.
これはね、うちの大事な剣棒なの。
Mentions that Kembo isn't really good at anything, but he's special to her anyways.
くれたりしないの。
He's just like me.
光の大事なお友達なんだ。あれ？ひかりちゃんは犬と猫どっちが好きなの？え？両方よ。桜川へ出る近道になるんだ。
Following Hikari, she mentions that we have to sneak through the clinic, as if I don't walk around like I own the place daily.
さあ、到着。
We arrive at the secret beach, and, well, it's the beach I've already been to a few times, so it's clearly not very secret.
砂浜ってここのことなのか。え？なんか言った？いや、なんでもない。ねえ、なんでここが秘密の砂浜なの？え？それはね、ひかり、最近までここのこと知らなかったんだ。だから秘密の砂浜なんだ。
However, she does explain that if you swim past the harbor by the inn, this is where you'll end up, and vice versa. So you've got a pretty spectacular shortcut, should we need one. Simon interrupts the scene briefly to take your photo once again, quickly leaves.
いつもよりいい顔してね。はい、チーズ。写真楽しみにしててね。
ありがとう、サイモン。
Seeing as I'm already at the beach, I spend a lot of time swimming, and I mean a lot. Still no luck finding that rocket. Later, I find Yo in the graveyard, and he's doing a great part, looking in that one bush for all his rockets. You'll find them one day, champ. Back at the clinic, I give Gramps another back massage for some pocket money, while Nagisa mentions that she has a date tomorrow, but won't say with who. Damn, I thought we were friends.
誰とデートなの？秘密です。
Sitting on the bench outside of the kitchen, we find Yoshika, playing the guitar.
誰に習ったの？
Boku mentions that it seems to be kind of a sad song, and while I kind of agree with that take, it's also kind of relaxing. I guess the song is Memories of Alhambra by Francisco Tárrega,
なんでずーっと同じ曲ばかり弾いてるの？
something that even though Yoshika tells me what the song is, I'd never thought to look it up until now.
私にギターを教えてくれた人はそれも
Spent some time just listening to her play, which was an excellent way to spend my afternoon. Later that evening, Yoshika asks if I've seen any suspicious guests around, to which Boku replies,
これお姉ちゃん。
I think you're the shadiest person here. And I mean,
打つよ
she seems nice, but that is a shady question to drop out of nowhere.
打つよ
やめて。
This morning, I'm filled with determination. I'm going into the water, and I'm not coming out until I find the rocket. I spend so much time in the water that it would have been reason. I spend so much time in the water that it would have been. I spend so much time in the water that it would have been reasonable to file a missing persons report for Boku. That boy part of the sea now. With Boku nearly out of oxygen, I see something red on the sea floor, and it's the rocket. I finally found it after days. Grab it as quick as I can, and spring to the surface as fast as possible, so his aunt and uncle don't have to file that missing persons. I find Dr. Sagara sitting quietly at the ferry dock, fishing.
あれおじいちゃん、今日診療所は
日曜はお休みじ
そうか。
ゃ。でも今日は
I decide to be a little shit and jump into the water to scare all the fish away. I mean, look, Boku's cute. He can still get away with this kind of stuff, so I will take advantage of it when I can. Excitedly, I head back to Yo to give him the rocket valve I'd salvaged, but for whatever reason, he really only cares about that bush. Guess I'll give it to him later. Out on our usual trail, we see an unusual sight. Uncle Genta.
ここで橋を直す
He tells us two important things. That he's going to build a bridge here, so I'll have a new place to play soon.
そうなんだ。ねえ、この向こうには何があるの？
まあここより少し森が深くなって。
うんうん。
But also that the Wolfman lives
な
here.
んだそれ。
生きていか
もちろん。
しょうがねえな。じゃあちょっくらスペシャルな橋の。
よしよしよしよし。
In the insect fighting ring, I throw on my MLG hat, sip my Mountain Dew, and my little Oni stag beetle starts to clean house.
いけるかも。ああ、強くなりたいよ。やった、いけるかも。ああ、強くなりたいよ。よしよし。
I get 8 wins in a row, and that means I have 10 wins, which now I have the privilege of giving this beetle a proper name. And I could think of nothing more fitting than Wild Joe.
次、僕の番か。
それはね、私のおじいさんは鉱山技師だった。
The evening ends up being pretty uneventful. Spent some time just having pretty surface level conversations with people around the inn.
意外に平凡な理由ね。
おじちゃん今日はよっぽど疲れてたみたいで、ご飯を食べたらバタンキューでした。
バタンキュ
バタンキューって寝ちゃうことよ。
Over breakfast, Uncle Genta mentions that he has fixed up the bridge to Okusawa, just in case you didn't run into him the previous day while he was working on it. The children are all pretty excited and agree to meet at the bridge as soon as they finish breakfast.
なーし。
あれなんか不穏な匂いがしますわ。
よし、じゃあ今日はみんなで奥さん探検だ。あれ、僕ちゃんは？
As promised, once the meal wrapped up, I was off to the bridge, even taking the bike to get there a little faster. As I pass through the clinic, I make a little pit stop to see Nagisa and Dr. Sagara.
どうしたのかな。
Nagisa seems concerned that something is troubling the doctor. Eventually, I make my way over to the bridge to see my uncle's handiwork. The man wants to take credit for building a bridge when all he did was somehow take down a telephone pole and place it over the gap. Okay, I mean, I guess if the man moved an entire telephone pole, that deserves some credit.
やっぱ一仕事終わっただ気持ちいいやね。
イエーイ、俺一番乗り。
僕が2番だもんね。
よし。久しぶりにこっちの岸に渡ったらなんだかワクワクするぜ。
ワクワクワク。
じゃあ今から奥沢探検隊スタートだ。せーの。
えいえいおー。
Across the bridge, the music kicks in, and it feels like the beginning of a real adventure. A whole new area to explore. This is what I was referring to earlier about limited use of music. When this song started playing out of nowhere, I was getting so excited to see this area. It brought me back to so many times in my childhood when I would get to go explore a new area of the woods or behind a friend's house. You know, kid stuff. Next, we actually find one of Yo's crashed rockets. The cousins are tentative about touching it, but I know what I'm looking for, so give me that valve.
お前危ないから触んないよ。
うん、そうだ。部品を取り出してお兄ちゃんに持ってかなきゃ。
確かバルブって言ってたけど。
え、それってどれ？
わかんないよ。
どうするの？また今度かな。
お兄ちゃん、 諦めるのずいぶん早いね。
じゃあ次も頑張っていくぜ。あー。
どれがバルブかな。よくわからないや。
そのバルブにはマジックでバルブと書かれていた。
Next up, a rickety wooden suspension bridge over a lake. It's a beautiful area, but Boku is understandably a little scared of it.
うわ、ここ怖いよ。
I part ways with my cousins and find myself in the wasabi fields. Nothing to do here, but hey, it's wasabi. Following the path, I find a tree that I think I might find some new beetles, but this is not the case. Instead, interacting with this tree causes Boku to poke the beehive with his fishing rod.
あらららら。
While he might not be the brightest kid in the world, this is also how I discovered the fast travel tech, so maybe the kid's smarter than he looks.
意外に丈夫じゃない。
I take my time getting back to where I was, doing some fishing in the streams, catching some bugs, the usual stuff. Eventually, I found what looks like someone's property. They've got a dock and a water wheel. With seemingly nothing else to explore, I dive in to see what I can find in this water. Towards the evening, I find myself back at the clinic, and I notice that one of the doors has been left ajar.
病室にはいつの間にか、多分私が知らないうちに入院したのであろう一人の少女がいた。
Opening it up, I find a patient in there.
でも、
She has some kind of problem with her heart, but no one's really sure what the issue is. Pretty hesitant to talk much, but I agree to come back to see her again tomorrow.
いいよ。でも、何？いや、なんでもないの。
During dinner that night, my aunt also mentions that Dr. Sagara looks
道ですれ違って
despondent.
もため息ばかりついてるの。やすこちゃんに聞いたら、うちでもそんな感じなんですって。
きっと何か悩みがあるんだよ。
奥さんの探検、なかなか面白かっただろう。
まあ、都会っぽい。
That evening, I find my cousins outside, and Shigeru mentions being surprised that I could handle the Okasawa expedition, being that I'm city folk.
どれもいいけど、あの辺りってすごいたくさんセミがいたな。
Later, talking to Simon, he gives me the photo he had taken of Hikari and I when we were on the secret beach.
わあ、ありがとうサイモン。
In the photo, you can actually see Boku is blushing here, and it's kind of cute. I talk to my aunt while she's clearly watching wrestling, and here I learn that I can give her a massage too if I'm looking for another way to earn some money. And after that, I decide to end the night.
本当にいいの？じゃあ、ちょっとだけお願いしようかな。
By August 10th, my morning glories have started to bloom, while the vines belonging to each of my cousins have hardly grown at all.
ねえおじいちゃん、最後に患者さん。
Dr. Sagara mentions that they haven't had a sick patient in a long time, and the last one was actually just there to hit on Nagisa. Is this man aware that there's a patient in the other room currently? Speaking of, I go to the other room, and the girl from yesterday is just not here. I tell Yasuko that I had finally met Yo. She stays mostly quiet, but mentions that he has always been tinkering with machines, even when they were
お
friends.
兄ちゃんロケットに夢中って感じだったよ。
そうなんだ。
Later that afternoon, we once again hear Yoshika playing the guitar. I approach her and Boku asks why she never sings. but then quickly accuses her of not being a good singer. Understandably, she takes issue with that, but then just tells us that she doesn't have a song that she knows how to sing that's appropriate for kids. But she does promise that if we grow up a bit more, she'll sing it for us.
もうちょっと大人になれたら少しだけ歌ってあげてもいいかな。
それってどうすればいいの？
知らないよ。自分で勝手に成長しな、少年。
That night we see Yasuko sitting alone on the swings in the park.
ボクくん、こんばんは。こんばんは、お姉ちゃん。
She tells us about how her and her father would sit on these swings and look up at the stars.
昔よくお父さんとこの公園に来て二人で星を見てたんだ。うちのお父さん、筋金入りの天体マニアだったから。
へえ、そうなんだ。
うん。こうしてブランコに乗ってると、なんだかあの。
Now she sits here to remember her father.
どうしたの？
Inside we talk to Dr. Sagara and how lately his wife has been appearing to him.
どんな夢なの？
He remembers her smile fondly. Yeah, I've got the idea we saw your wife too, old man.
まだ若い頃の家内が土間の隅でぬか漬けの樽をかき混ぜておった。天井近くの窓から幾筋か光が差しておっての。
At the end of the day, Boku writes in his journal, "Nothing special happened today, but I still think it was a wonderful day." And I think that's a pretty good way to live. The morning of August 11th, I decided to go see Yo, who thankfully this time was at his house instead of looking in that same bush again for his rocket. Boku asks if he lives alone because he's the only one we've ever seen around. Here we learn his father is around, but spends the majority of his time in his charcoal cabin out by the lake, leaving Yo alone most of the time. Boku then decides to ask why Yasuko never comes to visit, someone he's shocked to discover we even seem to know. He recaps what we've already known. The two used to be the closest of friends, but they haven't spoken in some time. Yo sees her as a popular girl, and he's too afraid to speak to her. While we're there, we finally hand over one of the rocket valves to him, and for whatever reason, you can't hand them both in at the same time. But regardless, he's very appreciative.
うわ、これ補助ロケットのバルブじゃないか。これで次の打ち上げではちょっとだけお金が節約できるよ。ありがとう。
That evening, the young girl staying in the clinic is there once again. Tells us about how Dr. Sagara is a very happy person, but does have spells of loneliness.
そうなんだ。
ここのおじいちゃん、明るいけど、でもとても寂しがり屋ね。
Back at the inn, Simon and Yoshika are talking again, and Simon paints us a picture with his words of a seal being devoured by an orca, and that Yoshika in this scenario would be the seal. Honestly, it's kind of a fucked up thing to say to somebody, but she seems okay with the conversation, so I guess as a child walking in mid-conversation, might be missing some context.
アザラシを食べるシャリシャリという音だけが響き渡るのさ。
素敵だわ。
あれ？お姉ちゃんはシャチなの？アザラシなの？
アザラシだよ。
さっきしずえちゃんから電話があって、昼の船で来るって。
At breakfast, we're told that Shizue will be arriving on the midday ferry. Who exactly is that? We'll find out.
じゃあ俺、また廊下の掃除でもして小遣いもらっちゃおうかな。何言ってんの。ここはあんたの家でしょ。
じゃあいただきます。
いただきます。
In the upstairs kitchen, Yoshika is cutting up some vegetables and offers us some cucumber slices. Disgusting.
おいしいね。
キュウリ、もうちょっと食べる？
やっぱりおいしいね。ねえ、おばちゃんとしずえちゃんと仲がいい。
Later, we find our aunt outside the main entryway, and she tells us that she's friends with Shizue because she used to be her neighbor. So, that makes this woman Yasuko's and Hikari's
しっ
mother.
かりしてるのよね。
Why wouldn't she stay at their place, though? Clearly something happened here, and I don't think it's my business, but Boku's 9. I'm gonna make it my business.
てくれたっけ。
On my way up the hill, I decide to go pet Kembo again, but he actually manages to break off his leash and run off. Looks like my plans are cancelled. I've got a dog to catch. Eventually, I find Kembo out where my uncle had laid the bridge to Okusawa.
何かあるのかな？
Kembo leads me to a different area where we find remains of some kind of canine.
それはボロボロに汚れてなんだかほとんどわからなくなった犬のような生き物の亡骸だった。
ねえ、君は誰？
Boku gives the remains a proper burial, and he presses F before heading out to do some fishing. That evening, the young girl is back in the clinic. We talk about her family tree, and she says how, quote, things have changed over the years. I mean, yeah, that's how things work. Family has grandparents, parents, and 2 girls. Pretty normal.
へえ、そうなんだ。
辛いことも悲しいこともあったけど、でも家族がいたから。
Boku asks about sad times that she mentioned, but she won't go into them. Might be for the best, being that he's a child.
だって大事な家族のことなんだもん。
じゃあいるんだ。
まあね。でも完璧に過去形
That night, we ask Yoshika if she has a crush on anyone.
その人もう長いこと日本にいないんだ。
She tells us of someone from her past that moved to Madrid, which Boku thinks is something you spread on bread.
仕事でマドリードっていう大きな町にいるんだ。
パンに塗るやつ？
I've never been more sure of the kind of grades a character is getting.
よくわからないぞ。おばちゃんってさ、俺がちっちゃい頃よく遊んで
Talking to Takashi and Shigeru, they say this wild shit.
母ちゃん言ってたよ。
That's weird, right? Like, that's not a normal thing people just do.
そのおっぱいってしげる。お前が飲んでたんだぞ。
Never do end up running into Shizue. Poke inside her room briefly, but it's nothing there.
賑やかだけど、みんな集まってもこの人数。
Takashi and Shigeru talk about getting a baseball game together.
野球は味方だけじゃなくて、相手のチームの人数もいるんだよ。
おーい、みんな、撮るよ。
あれ、サイモン。
That's when Simon comes by and asks to take our photo. Seemingly sensing the presence of a camera, Hikari appears from somewhere to join the photo as well.
はい、チーズ。
When the camera switches back to its usual position for this area of the house, here we see a new woman. Shizue and Hikari, who I didn't know were here before the photograph.
うちの光と。
Talking to Shizue, we don't learn anything about her at all. Instead, learn that Hikari has started to drink all her milk at school. Good for her, I guess. Hikari mentions her mom is tall and therefore cool, but more importantly mentions living with a different family.
お母さんのあっちの
Yeah, there certainly is a story here.
住んでみたいな。
Outside, I had to do my usual watering of the plants and see that mine are still doing pretty great. But now the other 2 vines are dying. Had I known the cousins weren't going to properly care for them, I would have watered them too. Feeling bad for the dying flowers, I desperately try to give them some water too, but there's no saving them. Just before dinner, I'm swimming towards the dock just outside the dining room when I find a 100 yen coin. Score. Not sure what I can buy, but I'm buying it. Later, sitting down to eat with the rest of the family, Aunt Mitsuko mentions that 100 yen is missing from the ledger. The kids don't say anything about it, but Takashi lets it slip that it wasn't him this time, which is a bad look. Boku stays quiet this entire time. Secretly, I think he likes the chaos a little bit. After the meal, the family mentions that there will be a monk arriving first thing in the morning to say the sutras.
お経をあげに来てもらうの。
お墓に？
いや、うちは仏壇。相良のうちはお墓に行ってあげてもらうけど。
Once I regained control, the first thing I did was track down my aunt to be a good egg and hand over the money. But she's currently preoccupied with the monk's arrival, so I guess it'll have to wait for another day. As expected, the monk arrives just as we were wrapping up breakfast. We all gather at the small shrine where he performs his service. Once finished, he presents a gift to the family. A load of fireworks, of all things. Hey, I'll never turn away some fireworks.
いいんですか？こんなにたくさん。
はい。それに先ほど塩立汽船の船頭さんにも山ほどあげてきました。
Outside, filled with guilt of the dying flowers, I continue to water all of the morning glories. Over in the graveyard, the monk is performing his services for the Sagara family. I'd like to say I was respectful and didn't bother anyone during the ceremony, but in truth I was chatting up everyone, even the monk. Talking to my uncle, he's muttering to himself about trying to find a way to attract more customers. Not entirely clear what he does for work, but Boku basically tells him it won't work because he's an uggo. Thankful for my life, I spend most of the day fishing, as one should. That evening, I head to the clinic to see the young girl again, but this time Dr. Sagara is here with her too. Okay, so he does know about her.
安成は元気か？
相変わらず毎晩星を見てますわ。
そうか。
ねえおじいちゃん、あまり悲しまないで。もう安子も光もあんなに大きくなったことだし。それに二人ともとってもいい子でしょ。
そうじゃな。
本当はいつでも私が一緒にいてあげられるといいんだけど。
ありがとう。
え？どうして？
会いに来てくれて本当にありがとう。
どういたしまして。
でも君にはもうじき会えるから。
まあやだ。 そんなこと言わないで。
Okay, so we could tell there was something off about this girl, coincidentally timed with Graham's attitude change. But if you hadn't pieced it together by now, this scene makes it pretty obvious that the girl in the clinic is actually the ghost of his late wife. And I think it's really sweet. Truth be told, in my original playthrough, I did not piece this together, because I'm dumb, I guess. But when I was going back and looking at all the footage, it was pretty clear. While eating dinner, Uncle Genta mentioned that he had sharpened the axe and that we shouldn't touch it because it's really sharp and dangerous. Totally understandable, but like, you've brought this axe to my attention, so now I want it. Especially when I already have a good use for it. After dinner, the kids all get to play with fireworks. Thankfully, they're just sparklers, so it's nothing too dangerous. But as a kid, playing with these, damn, couldn't get better. High off the buzz from playing with fire, I somehow managed to get myself stuck at the bottom of the staircase for, like, an embarrassing amount of time. No matter how much time I've put into this game, the tank controls will still get me sometimes. Upstairs on the balcony, I get to have my first proper conversation with Shizue. Turns out she's only here for a few days during Oban. As to why she's out on the balcony specifically, it's due to her love of the sea. Honestly, I grew up and lived around such large bodies of water that being able to look out at what was essentially the Atlantic Ocean every day was something I never really appreciated as much as I should have. But now that I live significantly more inland, it's kind of weird to be without it. At least I got lakes. Before going to bed, I hear the axe calling to me. Not actually sure if the game will let me take it or not. I try anyways. And guess what? Boku has an axe now, making him, at least temporarily, the most dangerous person in town. After breakfast, I find Aunt Mitsuko out by the Jizo statues. She mentioned that today, August 15th, is the anniversary of the end of the war here in Japan, and gives us a short but interesting history lesson about Oban.
お盆と終戦記念日が重なってるのって何か理由があるの？
どうなんだろう。でもみんなでお寺や墓参りに行ったり、なんとなく特別な時期だよね。ちなみに8月のお盆は旧盆って言います。普通にお盆と言ったら7月の中旬のことを指すのよ。明治の最初の頃に旧暦から新暦に暦が変わって、それで一月ずれちゃったんだって。
へえ、そうなんだ。
2月の節分でお豆をまくとき、鬼は外、福は内って言うじゃない。あれは去年の厄を払って新年の福を招き入れるって意味なの。そう考えるとなんだかお正月の行事みたいでしょ。あれもお盆と同じ理由でお正月が移動しちゃったから、少々不思議なことになっちゃってるのよ。
おばちゃんって物知りだね。
She ends all this by calling herself an Einstein of useless facts. Lady, give yourself some credit. This is both interesting and important. Nearby in the graveyard, we find Shizue paying her respects to her late husband and mother-in-law. She tells us how she might have fought a little harder to make her relationship with him work had she known how little time he had left. So it seems the relationship was on the rocks for a while before he passed. She left, leaving the kids with him, so when he passed it fell to Dr. Sagara to take care of them. Now it's time to head up to the path in front of Yo's house. There's an old tree here that's always looked a little suspicious. I mean, you can literally see the seam in the geometry where it's actually two separate objects. That's a prime cutting tree if I've ever seen one. Cutting down the tree, I've now got a natural bridge to another new area to explore. Just like last time, as soon as I make landfall in this new territory, the music kicks in, making this a proper adventure. The first time I arrived on this screen in my playthrough, it is the closest I've ever felt to what must be possession, because despite there being a few options for paths to take here, I immediately beeline for this plank of wood and actually find the third rocket valve. I spend some time catching new bugs in the area and eventually find myself at a cabin on the lake. We can see that this is actually the one we'd found a few days ago, but couldn't access it. And at least for now, it doesn't seem like anybody's here. I make my way back to Yo, who tells me he plans on trying one more rocket launch before the end of the summer. We also learn that a lot more time has passed since he and Yasuko were friends than we may have previously thought. It's been 10 years. I genuinely thought it had been like, maybe a year, making their weirdness a little, well, weird. But with this amount of time, it makes a little more sense. Boku either not understanding, or more likely, not caring about their current relationship, insists that they should go hang out again, even going as far as to call Yo a chicken if he won't speak to Yasuko. He agrees to meet me at the park entrance after dinner. Being proud of him for stepping outside of his comfort zone, I give him the rocket valve.
これで次の打ち上げではちょっとだけお金が節約できるよ。ありがとう。
Back at the clinic, I'm surprised that the girl is still here. Kinda thought we dealt with her story. She tells us she has to go far away soon.
どうしても行かなきゃいけないの？
Boku is sad that she has to leave, but happy that he gets to say goodbye to her.
そうなんだ。
They share a small moment before I head back to the inn, knowing this time we're not going to see her again.
さようなら。元気でね。あれ？どうしたの？何か変なこと言った？
いや、なんでもないよ。君といると楽しくて、つい笑っちゃうんだ。じゃあ、いつまでも元気でね。
逃げないでちゃんと来たんだ。
As promised, I meet Yo at the park that night. We walk towards Yasuko's room, when I remembered that I have not told her that I would bring Yo with me.
それにしてもこれじゃ僕が安子ちゃん家に肝試しに行くみたいだね。
He steps in to say hello, but feels far too awkward and excuses himself.
やっぱり帰るよ。
せっかく来たのに。
そうだよ。
いや帰る。ごめんなさい。
Happy to see her old friend, Yasuko stops him, and they agree it was nice seeing each other again.
あのね。
And they'll try to talk again in the future.
実は私、ヨウくんにお話ししたいことがあるの。もう何年も前からなんだけど。
それって何？
あのね。
どうしたの？
今度、昼間家に行くよ。すごい久しぶりだけど、その時話してあげる。おい、君はただのいたずらっ子？それとも人心をかき乱す悪魔みたいな。
Yasuko is a little annoyed that Boku butted into her life, but she does feel that them talking again after all this time was really important to her.
結構深刻に大事なことだったんだから。
毎日海ばかり見てた。
Out on the balcony, I find Shizue, who once again talks about her love of the sea, but also tells us how miserable she used to be, and how looking out to the sea somehow gave her the confidence to get out and change her life.
眠れなかったの？
That heavy conversation, I decided I should see Shizue off when she heads home on the midday ferry in a few hours. Ultimately, I was glad I made that decision, because when I arrived at the docks, I was the only other person there to see her. But it turns out that was partially by design. Shizue hadn't told most of the people she was leaving, not even her children. Goodbyes are difficult. I understand.
悲しいから光もおばちゃんも帰る日を言わないし聞かないのかな。
Over at Yo's place, he's thankful for us returning the 3 valves to him, and he asks us to sign the rocket.
見つけてくれたお礼と言っちゃなんなんだけど、この3段目のロケットに君のサインを入れてくれないかな。
サイン？
でっかく名前を書いてってこと。
名前を？
燃料の配合バランスやその他諸々のコツが分かってきたら、この3段ロケットを打ち上げてみようと思っているんだ。
これに名前？
Boku is hoping his name will end up in space one day.
本当に宇宙まで。
We talked about Yo's rockets for a while, and we learned that originally he started with rockets because he was just desperate for something to do. And how he still gets nervous when they go off because so many things could go wrong. But it's the problem-solving aspect that makes up for it. The rest of the afternoon, I'm catching bugs.
やった！何を読んでるの？
ちょっと怖い漫画だけど、学校の教室ごと地球。
That night we find Takashi reading what I'm pretty sure is supposed to be The Drifting Classroom by Kazuo Umezu, a manga that I'd only recently learned about myself.
お姉ちゃんって大学で何を勉強？
We asked Yoshika what she studies in college, and she seems almost trapped by that question. After stumbling, she tells us she's interested in studying people, which, last I checked, is not a real subject.
なんとなくわかるよ。
Yoshika seems like a nice woman, but there's been a few instances since her arrival that has struck me as a bit odd.
よーく見てると時々鼻
That night before bed, Boku writes that he hopes that writing his name on the rocket means that he too can conquer the world, before scratching it out and replacing it with exploring space. Hey kid, dream big. At breakfast, we learn that Uncle Genta used to be a carpenter, but he quit the business.
昔大工さんだったの？
そうだよ。でもやめちまった。
なんで？
Boku asks him why, and the entire family looks a bit sad and remains quiet. Touchy subject, I guess.
いただきます。
ねえおじちゃん。
After eating, I find Genta out in the yard and ask again why he quit.
ああ、なんでだっけな。
He thinks for a moment, before silently returning to what he was doing. I decided to spend a lot of time in the insect fighting arena. And overall, my beetles are doing pretty well. Especially Wild Joe.
よし行け。ああ悔しい。よし行け。ああ悔しい。どうやらノコの天敵はお肉はらしいぜ。次。
Just before dinner that evening, I remember that I never returned that 100 yen coin to Aunt Mitsuko. Before taking another guess at what's for dinner, I hand over the coin.
僕この海の家の下で100円拾ったんだけど。
え？どれどれ？
はい。
あらやだ。この床下に落ちてたんだ。へえ。でも、たけしが犯人じゃなくてよかったな。ありがとう。僕くん、お手柄だね。
While we eat, Boku asks about Yo's father. He used to do something with wolves, but now just makes charcoal. But everyone still calls him Wolfman.
今は炭焼きの職人さんなのよ。
でもみんな狼じじって呼んでるぜ。
だって狼じじいは狼じじいだよ。
狼じじいに向かって。
Later that evening, Mitsuko tells us should we ever meet Wolfman, not to call him that. But realizing she doesn't know his real name either, suggests we call him Mr. Wolfman. Upstairs, Simon calls Yoshiko a and he likes her like, quote, a polar bear dashing gently across the Siberian. But also the bear is about to fall, and also it's actually a guy in a bear costume. It's such an incredibly odd thing to say that I don't know if it's something genuinely lost in translation here, or some kind of Japanism or Germanism. Or maybe Simon is just weird. That night, talking to Yasuko, she's clearly bothered by the fact another visit went by without her mom saying a word to her. She doesn't feel like she should have to deal with this kind of drama at her age. And she's kind of right. I mean, I wish she didn't have to deal with this kind of thing. Something like that could be hard for even an adult. Hell, when I was her age, the hardest thing I had to deal with was trying to get the Big Boss emblem in Metal Gear Solid 4. The next morning I asked Uncle Genta again why he was no longer a carpenter. We don't get much out of him other than he would like to still be doing it. Up in her guest room, we have a talk with Yoshika, who tells us that she's really lonely staying here by herself, and she even asks us to share a bed with her. Thankfully, Boku knows that's not something he should do. Good kid. But also, Yoshika. Weird question. Talking to Simon, we learn he's traveled all over the world, but is favorite place is the Sanuki Plains in Japan, because of the udon noodles there. And I mean, who doesn't love good udon? Up at the clinic, we find Nagisa sitting outside where Boku asks how she spent her holiday.
実家に帰ってたっぷり骨休めをしてきました。
骨休め？その間骨以外はどうしてるの？
腐らないように裏の井戸で冷やしておくのよ。
そうなんだ。
今年はたくさん昼寝をしてきたし、あとうちの近所の森の中をたっぷり。あれ？今日の晩ご飯なんで豪華なの？
For dinner that evening, we get some nice, whimsical music as Shigeru and Takashi forget that it's their mother's birthday. Feel bad for Aunt Mitsuko here. Not so much that her kids forgot. I mean, they're children after all. But to have to work all evening making your own birthday meal. Genta, get your shit together. I know you're unemployed. However, Mitsuko's a good sport about it. She knows it's her birthday and wants to eat her favorite food, and she's the only one who knows how to make it the way she likes it. Which, yeah, I kinda get. That night, an unprompted Boku tells his cousins that he's scared when he thinks about the edge of the universe. I guess you're never too young to fear the cosmic horrors.
確かにそうだな。端っこがあるとしたら、そこから先はどうなってるんだろう。あの横須賀の事件、あと10日で時効だってさ。
どんな事件？
The morning of August 19th, Takeshi drops a bomb on us out of nowhere, telling us not only about the existence of the Yokosuka robber, but also that there's only 10 days left to catch them. Apparently, they stole 50 million yen worth of gold, which, you convert that to the old Canadian dollar, adjust for inflation, it's a $2.5 million. Or, one half of a Toronto studio apartment. Upstairs in the guest room that Shizue was staying in, I find a napkin sitting on the table with a key sitting atop it. It's a little too deliberate to have been an accident. She wanted somebody to find this key. Knowing exactly which door this key belongs to, I race off to see Yasuko. With just a quick pit stop at the Morning Glories, I see even my vine has started to wither away, unfortunately. I'd done everything I could, but this is just the first sign that the summer is beginning to come to an end. When I get to Yasuko's house, of course she's not home. In fact, nobody is. I head down to the park only to see Hikari walk by carrying a bag. We follow her into the abandoned house, and when she comes out, she's not holding that bag anymore. Well, I guess it's been Hikari that's been feeding all the stray cats in the area. I go to confront her about it, but she just asks me about my fortune, so I guess I didn't see it. Later that afternoon, I find my cousins hanging out on the path towards Yo's house. We learn that Takashi wants to be a gym teacher when he grows up, because he loves gym and was inspired by a great gym teacher who he had that knew how to grade different children on different things and not just fail them outright. After this, I decided to head up to the cabin that belongs to Yo's father, Mr. Wolfman. And, to my surprise, he's here this time. He's not much of a talker. Everything he tells us, we've already known. Stuff like, he likes making charcoal, and unsurprisingly, doesn't love being called Wolfman. At dinner that evening, Aunt Mitsuko thanks me in front of the family for returning the 100 yen coin. I think the last 2 days had scripted events during those meals, so maybe this is the first time that it could have been mentioned, even though I actually handed it over a few days ago. That evening, I find Yasuko again on the swings in the park, thinking about her late father. She shares with us that her grandfather used to say over and over, quote, a long time ago, her father found something amazing in the sea. And that in the end, no one ever got to see what he found. But after the discovery is when talks of remodeling the house and purchase of an expensive telescope began. I'm actually not too sure what he found. I took a pretty good look around the house to see if there were any hints, but I couldn't find anything. However, it's safe to say that he found something pretty valuable if he suddenly had remodeled the house money.
お父さん
Before bed, Boku writes in his journal about discovering that Hikari has been feeding the cats. But my favorite part of this is that Boku seemingly laments the fact that Hikari wouldn't give him any cat food. We wake up and learn that at some point during the night, Fumi has been hit by an earthquake. The house is in one piece, so it wasn't anything too severe. However, it was enough to shake the family car into the bay. Look, I'm not a car guy, but I know a car probably shouldn't be there. I head over to Yasuko's room again, hoping to give her the key that I found, but once again, she's not home. I try unlocking the door myself, but the game won't allow for that. Not wanting to forget I have the key, the only other thing I can think of is to hand it over to Dr. Sagara. On the plus side, I'm able to give him the key. On the downside, he has no idea what it could be for. My guy, how can you not? With that task out of the way, I spent a lot of time catching and categorizing my insects. And I'm making some decent progress with this. My search for bugs eventually leads me to the mountain path behind the bathhouse. There I find Shigeru and Takashi marveling at the tunnel that the earthquake must have uncovered. Given that the entryway is framed, this was probably some kind of mine at some point in the town's history. Currently, the cousins are blocking the way inside, so if I want to be brave and take a look, I'm gonna have to come back later. A while later, I find Yasuko standing outside Yo's house. She's clearly still nervous to talk to him, but seeing Boku gives her that little kick she needed to round the corner of his house and talk to him
どう
again.
しようかな。いや、自分で行くよ。
Here we get a kind of a come together / apology from the two of them. They talk about how they never meant to hurt the other person by drifting apart. It's a nice conversation between the two of them. And Boku is not at all paying attention to this. And at one point, he just awkwardly slides into frame.
そうか。あの頃はさ、同い年だと思ってたのにね。
そうだね。地震のせいだと思うんだけど。
At dinner, the kids tell Aunt Mitsuko and Uncle Genta about the cave opening that appeared. And, understandably, they tell us to stay away because it's dangerous. The kids and myself are only thinking about that tunnel, but at night the only ways to get there are blocked. So that means it's time to catch more bugs. Outside after breakfast, I find a man I have never met before standing on the dock. He's just arrived in town and was looking for a room to stay. Asking him his name, he tells us it's not worth mentioning. But when questioned farther, he gives the name Taniguchi. Probably not his real name, but it's what I'll call him for the time being. Walking through the house, we see that Yoshika is talking on the phone. We decide to listen in, and she talks about not having any hard evidence, but instead having a hunch about something, and then requests a photograph from the file of someone named Yasuda. She asks to keep working alone because she is confident that she can do this. Now, since the beginning, we've known that something was off about Yoshika, and now, turns out she's a pig. Heading upstairs to the guest room that Taniguchi is staying in, we find him sleeping, which means it's time to snoop. There isn't really anything of note other than this, frankly, massive bottle of liquor that he brought with him. Over in the insect fighting arena, I have another champion on my team.
あー負けちゃった。
This time I named them Great Wolf. Honestly, it's kind of a shit name. I could have done better with this one.
僕の番か。頑張れ頑張れ。
Walking back towards the inn, I find Nagisa on the
お
swings.
姉さんね、
She tells us that she loved the swings as a kid, but not so much as an adult, because she's too dummy thick, apparently.
ちょっとね、
なんで？
ちょっとお尻が窮屈なのよね。
I take an attempt at guessing what's going to be for dinner that night, and I go with fish head soup.
じゃあ今日の晩ご飯楽しみにしててね。
When we see the meal spread out, it's too hard to tell exactly what we're eating. But talking to my aunt later that evening, finally, after countless incorrect guesses, I guess what we're having for dinner correctly. My reward?
ボクくん大正解でした。
A little victory dude.
I don't know what I expected.
小学生あんまり3号室の
That night, Yoshika tells us to stay away from the man staying in room 3,
どうしても
which we know is Taniguchi. Doesn't really explain why, though. Now, that might be acceptable to a 9-year-old child, but not me, a 31-year-old man. So, of course, I immediately go and see him. Looks like he's having a couple drinks alone. We ask him a little bit about himself, and he tells us that he used to be a diver that worked underwater construction and pipeline inspection. Tells us it's hard and dangerous work, but because of it, pays pretty well. Talking to Yasuko on the swings again, we learn that starting tomorrow, she'll start tutoring Yo. Boku's confused, not by the fact that she would be tutoring him, but by the fact they've suddenly gotten so close. Guess he wasn't paying that much attention to their re-emerging friendship. August 22nd starts with the Yoshika swimsuit jump scare. The breakfast scene ends, and she's just there, front and center. Genuinely startled me. She says it's because there's a great view of the harbor from here, which, like, yeah, there is. But she's clearly waiting for something.
そろそろ出てきてるかな。
Out back, I see my cousins are no longer standing out in front of the tunnel entrance, which means I'm going into that tunnel. Just as you would expect, Takashi and Shigeru are already inside, staring down the mouth of a massive pit.
この穴結構深そうだな。
Takashi clearly wants to jump down, but he's obviously too afraid to make the jump. I can't blame him. Turns out Boku's also afraid. So I spend the rest of the day swimming and catching bugs. That evening, when we all sit down to eat, Shigeru runs in screaming that Takashi has fallen down the hole.
父ちゃん。
We cut ahead a few minutes later as Uncle Genta is climbing a rope up and out of the pit with Takashi on his back. Thankfully, Takashi is completely fine. Nothing more than a swollen ankle, but a scary experience for him, I'm sure. Aunt Mitsuko is understandably very worried and relieved, but Uncle Genta, on the other hand, just wants to go back and finish his meal.
どんなにあんたたちのことを大事に思ってるのかわかんないの。
お母さん、鼻水出てるよ。
ごちそうさまでした。
ごちそうさまでした。
Later, when Uncle Genta has a full stomach, he has a bit more of a heartfelt reaction to what happened here today.
お前たちが生まれてきた時によ、父ちゃんあんまり可愛いんで神様のとこ行ってお願いしてきたんだぜ。バカでもいいからとにかく健康に育ちますように、そして正直な人間になりますようにって。確か賽銭箱に100円も入れちゃったや。
100円。
そうだ。まあ母ちゃんだって気持ちは同じだ。
うん、わかったよ。もうあんまり危ないことしないよ。
ごめんなさい。おじちゃん。
That night, I went up to chat with Taniguchi again. He's drinking it again, but at least we get a little more out of him this time.
お前がここの家の子か。
違うよ。僕はお母さんが赤ちゃんを産むから 夏休みだけここにいるんだ。
Tells us his mother has been sick for a while now. No immediate danger, but she requires surgery. And they want a lot of money for it. Just wants her to live a healthy life. But I'm starting to wonder if Taniguchi may have recently come into enough money to pay for this surgery. At breakfast, Takashi apologizes for being foolish yesterday, and luckily for him, his ankle has basically healed overnight.
まだちょっと痛いけどもう腫れてないしとにかく折れてなくて本当によかったわ
お兄ちゃん頑丈なんだね。
Over on the beach, I find both Yasuko and Hikari soaking in some rays. As great as that does sound, they mostly look sad with the knowledge that summer is coming to an end. From here I can see Aunt Mitsuko standing at the park's edge, which is a new location for her. So I'm gonna go talk to her next.
なんだか海の水がちょっとだけ冷たいのよね。
She tells us that they'll soon be able to see the jellyfish, and she thinks they're kinda cute. Which, I don't agree, unless they look like Thetismon.
来ないわけじゃないのよ
Late that afternoon, I chat up the boatman, and it turns out he's sad because he's 32 and single. Which, hey, I get how you feel. But then he mentions being bitter that Yasuko got, quote, snatched away. Excuse me? Even Boku was like, dude, what the fuck? That night we hear Yoshika on the phone again. She's on to something, and someone looks exactly like the photograph she was provided from Yasuda's file.
はい彼ならいろんな意味で安全だしいいですよ
She ends the call by saying, quote, the polar bear can tell you the rest. Maybe this is a reference to when Simon implied that she was a bear, but I can't be too sure. Assuming she's on to my boy Taniguchi, I go spend some time with him again. I ask why he quit working as a diver, and I guess that's a secret. Downstairs, seeing that Yoshika is still on the phone, I overhear that something will be happening tomorrow morning. I guess we'll have to wait and see. We're told that a new man has arrived and is looking for a room. But the inn being full at the moment, he agrees to set up a tent on the beach. I'm going to assume that this is what Yoshika was talking about happening last night on the phone.
でももう貼っちゃったよあの人
I am immediately proven wrong by another one of her patented swimsuit jump scares while she mumbles about someone showing up eventually.
そろそろ尻尾を出してくれないかな
Let's just ignore her for now and go talk to our new beach
タヌ
friend.
キなのかキツネなのかとにかくは
Out on the beach, we see a tent set up and a man sitting out in front of it. This is Yasuda.
というわけじゃなくて
So now we know that isn't the name of the person Yoshika is looking for, but instead it's her partner of some kind.
でも
He claims to be just a, quote, beach-loving dude, but does let us know that he is friends with Yoshika.
お兄さん女子大生が好きだ。
Boku asks if he's in love with her. He says no, but Boku goes straight into playing manipulative mind games by saying, we're best friends, right? You wouldn't lie to your best friend.
だったら隠し事は良くないよ。
Yasuda immediately surrenders and answers truthfully that he does have feelings for Yoshika. Damn, Boku. You broke a cop that quick. Either you're going places or that cop ain't. With that out in the open, Boku does at least promise to keep it a secret between the two of them. However, I, the player, made no such promise and immediately ran off to go tell her. Here I actually get an achievement saying that I accidentally broke my promise, which I assure you, this was no accident. I wanted to ruin that man's life.
だって本人に聞いたんだもん。
Yoshika had already suspected as much from Yasuda, but then does scold Boku for supposedly breaking a promise between boys.
安田さんが私のことを
I mean, it is kind of nice that she tells Boku that he should learn how to keep his secrets.
あ、忘れてた。
でもまあ恋愛の始
I wander around for a while before I decide to check out the pit that Takashi fell into earlier. Oh, look at this. The rope that Uncle Genta used to rescue Takashi is still here. Don't mind if I do. Heading down this area, we come across a large iron door, and I know exactly where this is going to lead. I open it up and head outside just to be sure, and it turns out my assumptions end up being correct. It's the iron door on Hikari's secret beach that's been locked for the entire game. Backtracking through the tunnel, I take the other path instead this time. And I find a suspicious looking box that I rush over to and open up. This must be the gold from the robbery a few days ago. Instead of telling any adult about what I had found, I go fishing. I ain't no snitch. That night I talked to Taniguchi and learned that he had met Yoshika earlier in the day and that she was asking him a lot of questions and that her eyes scare him. I'm gonna be honest, I think your days are numbered, my guy. After breakfast, I head over to see Yo, because I felt like I hadn't talked to him in a few days. When I arrive, I find Yasuko there as well. She tells us that she's going to be hanging out here every day for the remainder of the summer, in an attempt to tutor Yo. Well then, I guess let's go see Yo's father too. He's just chillin', and Boku asks why he's always alone. And he does tell us that his wife left him 5 years ago. Over dinner that night, we learn that Uncle Genta has or had a fear of heights, and that's actually what played into him no longer working as a carpenter. We don't get any more than that. I'm going to assume that Genta likely fell on the job site. That night, Yasuda lets us know that he's aware that his secret has slipped out. It's sweet of him to ask if it was us who did it, knowing full well that it absolutely was. In the park that night, I stumble across Yo and Yasuko stargazing. You can join them if you'd like to learn a little bit about some constellations. Up in his guest room, Taniguchi asks how long Yoshika has been staying at the inn. Safe to say he's getting pretty suspicious. The next morning, Yoshika is still standing in the dining room in a swimsuit for some reason. So there were a few things I was able to piece together while I was watching back the footage from my playthrough that I didn't fully understand while I was playing. This is not one of those things. I have no idea what she's waiting for. My best guess is she's just thinking about the case. But why does she need to do it here specifically? Who knows? Over with Yasuko and Yo, we learn the reason he needs a tutor. It's that his grades are pretty bad in any subject that aren't math, physics, and chemistry. Which makes sense. Yasuko then leads us in a positive affirmation and visualization ritual that helped her get through her exams. I know it might sound a little silly to some people, but it's wild how effective that stuff can be, even if you do think it's a little silly.
ねえおじちゃん、
なんだおめえか。
来ちゃダメだった？
いや、そんなことはねえんだけどよ。
ねえおじちゃん。
Talking to the Wolfman again, I finally break through to him and he opens up a bit, talking to us about nature and his appreciation of wolves. He tells us he loves being up in the mountains and how everything just makes sense to him up there. He warns us that wolves live in their own world and the howl is a warning to stay where we belong.
あるよ。ワオーってやつでしょ。
そうだ。じゃあの声の意味がわかるか？
僕、狼の言葉はわかんないよ。
でも夕方になると、はい今日ももうおしまい。
That evening, Yoshika is playing the guitar again. We learn that sunsets feel sad to her because it meant the day was coming to an end. I guess that's why she's always playing such a sad song in the evenings. At dinner, Uncle Genta asks why the boys are so excited, and it turns out there's going to be another rocket launch in the morning.
でっかい花火が打ち上がるからよ。
今度はまっすぐ飛ぶかな。
大丈夫だって。
That night, I go and play with some sparklers again, but this time Boku is alone, and the shot of him just standing there all by himself is so sad that it almost becomes funny again.
明日はついに打ち上げだぜ。
Talking to the cousins, they're both really excited about the rocket tomorrow. I guess the boys really like rockets, because they also want to go see the one launching soon from the Tanegashima Space Center.
初めての液体燃料のロケットが打ち上げられるらしいよ。
At breakfast, all of the children are excited for the coming rocket launch. They quickly shovel food into their mouths and rush over to Yo's. At this point, we have found all the missing valves. Knowing we've done everything we can do to help, we watch on with excitement as the rocket blasts off.
じゃあ行くよ。
And pretty much right away, the rocket drifts far off course, well into the wilderness, and has no hope of being recovered. Yo is visibly defeated, but not for long.
また曲がっちゃったね。
この前のは左に曲がって、今日のは右に曲がったでしょ。
He realizes that if the rockets used to veer left, and this one went too far right, that maybe the perfect solution lies between the numbers of both rockets. Even with the failure, Yasuko rightfully calls Yo so cool. But the rest of the kids aren't as supportive, instead kind of bummed that it didn't fly into space. I decide to brighten everyone's mood a little bit by showing off how good I am at catching butterflies. Up in the mountains, I talk to Wolfman about making charcoal.
そう。とは言っても焼くのに5日、冷ますのに5日かかるから、毎日同じことをやってるわけじゃねえぞ。
ふーん、そうなんだ。
Boku very bluntly asks if he can make any money doing this. And he doesn't, but he still clearly takes a lot of pride in his work, which is something I have to admire. On the opposite side of that same coin, we have Uncle Genta. He wants to go back to working as a carpenter, but he recognizes now that he has a wife and kids and can't risk taking a chance on something that might not put food on the table, even at the expense of his own happiness. In the evening, I stumble across Simon trying to snap a picture of an honestly beautiful sunset over the bay. Somehow this isn't adequate enough for him, wanting instead to have been aboard the Apollo spacecraft to have been able to see a sunset from space. With Yasuda nearby, I decided to go see how tent life had been treating him. He let it slip that he's here for work and doesn't plan on staying much longer, but doesn't elaborate. That night we once again overhear something about an accomplice, that someone hasn't found the gold yet, and they'll move on him tomorrow. Uh-oh, Taniguchi. First thing in the morning, I go and check to see if Taniguchi is around. At this time in the morning, he's typically still sleeping, but this time there is no sign of him. But all of his belongings are still here, so we couldn't have gotten far. Outside, we see Yoshika trying to catch her breath. She asks if we've seen Taniguchi. And look, even if I wanted to lie, the truth was just as unhelpful. I hadn't seen him in a few days. I quickly go check on the gold that I've not told anyone about, only to find that it is still there. On my way through town, I passed the clinic and stopped to talk to Nagisa. She tells us she's going on a date tomorrow, but won't tell us with whom. She does, however, give us a hint that, quote, it'll come as a shock. Lady, I don't know a lot about you, so as long as it's not my Uncle Genta, I'm not going to be overly shocked. The rest of the day is fairly quiet, that is until dinner time. The three hurry outside to see Yoshika and Yasuda taking Taniguchi to the ferry out of town. That night, I go check out Taniguchi's room again. And this time, I see a pair of goggles had been left behind. Can't do nothing with them, but like, they're there. Talking to the cousins about the event, they're in the dark about most of the details. They know a man was arrested, but they don't think Yoshika is involved. Over in the park, Yo teaches me about the Draco constellation, and how the story of the dragon crying is the source of the Draconoid meteor shower. While not at all relevant to the arrest that had taken place, it is interesting. Talking to Uncle Genta in the morning, he tells me that when I see my mom again and hug her, that I'm going to cry. Boku disagrees, but Genta tells us that, quote, you're not allowed to cry after you grow up, so cry while you have the chance. While I don't agree with him entirely here, adults can cry too, but sometimes you do need to hide it. The real thing here is we have a dad in the mid-70s telling a young boy that it is okay to cry, which if more boys heard that, especially in the 70s, would have made one hell of a difference. I go to talk to Yoshika to see if she'll slip any details on what happened with Taniguchi. When I enter her room, she isn't there. In fact, nothing is. However, on the table at the far side of the room, she left a note saying, I'll never forget the time we shared. Peace out, Yoshika. Yoshika left after the events of yesterday, and I never got to say my goodbyes. To be honest, at this moment in the game, I was feeling pretty sad that someone I considered a friend would leave without saying anything. Maybe we weren't friends. After all, she was 26, and I was 9. Still wanting details on what happened, I take this opportunity to flip to the news on the television in the main room. The suspect behind the Yokosuka bank robbery had been arrested yesterday, and that 7 years ago, the suspect had attacked a bank vehicle with a flare gun and stole 50 million yen in gold bars. adding at the end that the statute of limitations on robbery without injury or death is 7 years. Meaning had he evaded capture for just a few more days, he would essentially be a free man. The fact there was only 1 day left and the police miraculously catch someone after all this time is a bit, we'll say, suspicious. That said, we did find the gold here in Fumi, so he probably did it.
皆さん、ビッグニュースです。私たち、結婚します。
します。
That evening, Simon and Nagisa arrived to announce their engagement to everybody. While I can't really say I'm shocked by this announcement, I didn't exactly see it coming. I'm mostly just confused. Why was it kept secret? Is it because I keep forgetting I'm 9? Immediately following dinner, Boku's father calls to announce the birth of his younger sibling. The family celebrates as Boku has now been thrust into the position of older sibling. I do sometimes wonder what it would feel like to be an older sibling. I mean, I have a younger brother, but we're barely a year apart, so I never really felt like the older sibling.
おめでとう。生まれたんだってね。
Simon congratulated me on the news and gifts me some photographs, one for each day that the morning glories were in bloom. I'm given 9 photos of the flowers, each with a little write-up. At breakfast, Aunt Mitsuko announces that there is a special guest staying here. None of the children, myself included, can think of whom it might be. After eating, I rush up to the guest rooms to see if anyone has arrived yet. Checking the rooms, there's no signs of guests staying in either one of them, so I'll have to check back again later. I spend a large portion of my day just wandering around with no real goal in mind, just taking in the sights and sounds one last time before my time in Fumi comes to an end. I guess appreciating the area does count as a goal. Spending some of my final moments walking through the inn, I hear it. It's barely perceptible at first, but stepping out onto the balcony, there's no denying it. I can hear the sounds of an acoustic guitar. I hurry as fast as my little 9-year-old legs will take me down to the dock where Yoshika is always playing, her music getting louder and louder as I approach. As I step outside, I see her. She came back. But before I get to say a word to her, Aunt Mitsuko calls the family in for dinner. I have never been so devastated over a meal. Over dinner, Takashi admits to knowing his dad wants to return to working as a carpenter, so he tells his father that if he can hold off for a few more years until Takashi has graduated college, that he'll take over the family business, allowing his father to return to the job he misses so much. It's a really nice gesture, especially when you consider the conversation Takashi and Boku had earlier in the summer where Takashi admitted to not wanting to work at the family inn at all. While it is very considerate, the look on the parents' faces tells me that they know a lot of things can change in 7 years. At the end of the meal, Yoshika comes in to surprise everybody, in case you missed her earlier, which I kind of did. She invites everyone to the beach for a farewell party. Takashi stays back a moment to reminisce over the summer we've shared, and that the summer of 75 will be one to remember.
そうだね。ねえ、たけし兄ちゃん。なんだ？いろいろとありがとう。よせよ、礼なんていらねえよ。まあ、
あっちに帰っても元気でな。
そして
Not knowing the proper words to share their feelings, the boys silently shake hands.
みんな横の浜辺に行ってるみたいだから。
The boys shaking hands here was too real that I nearly burst into laughter. Some boys really do be like that. On the beach, everyone is here. I can't play favorites, so I decided the fairest thing to do would be just to talk to everyone in the order they're sitting in. Simon and Nagisa say their goodbyes, and Boku asks them how long they've been together. Simon tells us that before they were even born, the two of them shared a deep cosmic bond. And that is the most "we've been dating for 4 days" thing a man could possibly say. Takashi and Shigeru mostly talk about that when Takashi takes over the family inn, he will invite Boku to come over as much as he likes. Aunt Mitsuko tells me that I've been a very good boy this summer, mostly because she isn't aware of the shit disturbing I've been up to. She even tells us that she wouldn't mind if we were part of her family for good.
と言いかけて、なんだか自分の母親に悪いような気がして。
In a rare moment of monologue, a future Boku tells us that he wouldn't have minded being a part of their family too. But he would have felt bad for his own mother, so opted to be silent instead. Hikari implies that she wants to move in with Boku and his family, and he is clearly a little shocked by that. Yasuko tells us how the roads and skies are much more open here at Fumi, and that she doesn't want to return to Tokyo because she might not be a city girl after all. Finally, talking to Yoshika. She properly welcomes us to the going away party, which Boku admits is less fun and more of a bummer. She apologizes for deceiving us, but more importantly, apologizes for disappearing all of a sudden the other day. Thankfully, Boku's a good kid and forgives her pretty easily. But then asks when she'll be returning to university, not at all understanding that she's been lying to him. Once you finish talking to everyone, Yo finally arrives and sits with Yasuko. After all, she's heading back home tomorrow as well. They admit that it's sad having to part ways after finally reconnecting, but Yasuko will do her best to write him letters, and Yo promises that he'll be patient in the times that she's too busy to write. Throughout the game, the two of them would occasionally struggle to remember a special way they used to say goodbye to each other. But now Yo had finally remembered. It was never anything special. Yasuko would just say, "See you tomorrow." And it always made him so happy to hear her say that it left an impact on him. Yasuko buries her head to hide her tears, and I can't blame her. That's one of the damn sweetest things I've ever heard. Yoshika once again joins the campfire, guitar in hand, asking if we want to hear her sing a song. She reminds us that she doesn't really have any good songs for kids, but that over the summer we've grown so much that she can hardly recognize us anymore. I'm not gonna lie, this broke me. I was a damn blubbering mess hearing her say this. At this moment in my life, I was working a very stressful job, trying my best to become a homeowner, and truly felt that doing this had made me step up in life to be able to handle all these things.
不意に起こる流れる人波を僕は見てる僕は見てる
ねえ、それなんて人の歌なの？
ハッピーエンド。
The morning of August 31st starts with Boku rushing off to do morning calisthenics in the park. Something I was initially confused by, because I had slept in literally every single day of summer, so I never knew what happened if you went to bed on time the night before. After that, the family finishes breakfast, and it's time to take Boku over to the pier to see him off.
船着き場に行こうか。
忘れ物ないか？
大丈夫だと思うよ。
Before that, we get a short scene of Yasuko giving an emotional goodbye with her sister and grandfather.
あちらでも頑張って暮らせよ。ほらほら、まるで赤子のようじゃの。
Surprisingly, Uncle Genta is having the hardest time with the goodbye, not even able to face Boku as he boards.
俺たちのこと忘れんなよ。
本日は千代田的線をご利用
As the ferry leaves the harbor, Boku continues to excitedly wave to his family as Yasuko looks to Yo's house, only to be left feeling sad when she doesn't see him there. But just then, you can see smoke start to fill Yo's yard. He's launching another rocket. This rocket goes perfectly. Boku and Yasuko share a hug and excitement as people all over town look on in amazement as well.
見えた。まっすぐ飛んでる。やった
私はあの夏に起こった出来事をいつまでも決して忘れないだろう。
And with that successful rocket launch, that's a wrap on Boku no Natsuyasumi 2. After the credits, if you happen to collect all 3 of the rocket valves, we're given one small final scene. The camera pans to the surface of the moon as a crashed rocket comes into frame. Boku's name was scrawled on in big bold letters, and Yo was successful in getting his rocket into space. The sounds of a gentle breeze blowing through the trees, birds chirping in the distance, the feeling of grass beneath your feet. The healing power of nature is something universally agreed upon. With that, Boku no Natsuyasumi 2 proves that there can actually be an adequate digital substitute to nature. Now, I'm not saying this is a replacement. Please, touch grass. But if you're unable to get outside or travel for any reason, the level of immersion crafted by Millennium Kitchen here is unrivaled. As an overworked 30-something-year-old, I was exactly the demographic this game was looking to connect with. And wow, they accomplished that. This game was something truly special to me while playing through it, and it has remained as such for the entirety of the time I've worked on this video, which was too long. The memories I made that summer would never be forgotten. Hello, I'm Colin, and you might remember me from such things as a podcast that hasn't uploaded in 6 years, or Beverage of the Gods, along with many, many other videos that I know none of you have watched. I wanted to film somewhere a little different for the end instead of my basement. I thought that this looked kind of nice. Found this spot in a hike one time. So I thought I'd come here. I thought it would be fitting for the video being about, getting back to nature and everything. And like, look, I don't see Toronto. I don't see Toronto out there. It's nice. It's nice here. I like it. To anyone who is still watching this video, genuinely, thank you. It's a long video, and I don't know how good or entertaining it is, but it's a long one, and that counts for something these days. This video took a lot of work. So much work. I know it doesn't show, but I don't do this stuff for a living. I have a full-time job. It was a lot of work. I started working on this video in September of 2024. So we're hitting on 13 months, and it's finally going out the door soon. Thank God. Truly. I'm so happy to be done with this. I have so much more respect for video creators, video essayists, whatever you want to call them. It's a lot of work. I mean, writing is hard. Writing well is even harder. I wouldn't know what that's like. Editing took... Oh my God, editing took so long. I consider myself an okay editor. This took me so long. Going through the footage to find all of the right pieces for what I'm talking about, it was so slow. I am genuinely surprised at how long it took. We're talking just weeks of just editing. Obviously, this video didn't take me 13 straight months to work on. I had a lot going on in my life. I allude to some of it in the video. Bought a house, and that took up a lot of time and energy, most importantly energy. I was wrapping up a production of television, which was getting pretty draining, honestly. It's a great show. Go check out Weather Hunters on PBS Kids. I worked on that. Shout out Al Roker. Then I was unemployed for a little while, which gave me a lot of time to work on this video, which was nice. But that didn't last very long. Like not even a week. The reality of having bills to pay kind of set in. So I took a manual labor job, which I am so tired. I'm so tired. I mean, I'm doing more work and I'm in the sun more than I've been in years, which is like genuinely really good. But like I hurt every day. So the last thing I wanted to do was come home and work on this video. And then I was just like burnt out for like 2 straight months. I don't think I touched this. I had nothing in the tank. I got to do a couple thank yous. I have to thank my wife, who, supported me. Not just literally financially through me being unemployed for a little bit. She encouraged me when I wanted to work on this video and, let me know it was okay to take a break when I was too tired. And, that really helped. I also want to thank my good, dear friend. I don't know what adjectives to use. But Alexei, thank you. Alexei did all of the music for like part 1 of this video, and probably underneath this part 2. I hadn't really thought that far ahead, but probably underneath this too. It was really awesome of them to not just make the music, but also like want to make the music. They did not hesitate when I asked if they would. And honestly, it was really cool working with a composer to make music with another person. It was really cool to, you know, collaborate with someone on an artistic project. It was really cool. All of them have blown up in my face before, so this was, you know, this is gonna cross the finish line. It's pretty cool. I kept this video a secret from like most people because I have a tendency to tell people about projects and then they never see the light of day. So I was like, I'm keeping this one tight-lipped. I did let it slip, and I told like 1 or 2 people, but that's it. As I neared the finish line, I started to tell a couple more people because I was like, all right, this is actually going to come out. So I can start telling people. I'm really proud of this video. Or more proud of me, I guess. I'm not delusional. I know this is not the greatest video of all time, far from. But it feels like the best thing that I could make. And the fact that I saw it through to the end, something I'm pretty notorious for not doing. If you're a long-time follower of this channel, which none of you are, you can see just tons of things that I start and don't finish. It's kind of my thing. I just packed this up. It's getting pretty windy. Happened to be outside. It's a little cold. It's 27 degrees the other day. I don't know what the fuck happened. Chicory, you know, that's a chicory shirt, represent. Got to keep it zipped up at the bottom because there's a stain from when I spilled ice cream on myself while driving. Not my best moment. Yeah, I'm just ranting at this point. I don't really know what else to say or do. Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's it. Bye, I guess. I live in there. So, bye.